What is going on? What is up, people? Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, we've got ourselves a show here, and I'm sitting here with Jennifer Manzo. Many of you know who she is, and for those of you who do not, you might be living under a rock in the industry, but yeah. So actually this show is I was actually supposed to have Brent Buckley on today, and Brent had something come up and he couldn't do it. And then it was just one of these things where I don't, we're in the same circle, and Jennifer was like, yeah, sure. Like I'll roll. Let's go. and so I'm stoked. I won't intro Jennifer. I'll let her do that. Jennifer, who are you?
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I am lots of things and lots of people all rolled into one person. Most of you know everything that I do, but just to kind of recap, I am the owner of Ballerini Air Conditioning Company in Maine. It's a very small company, just my husband, my son, and I. And I am the founder and owner of HVA-Chicks Coalition, which is a free training coalition and resource location coalition. We help everybody in the HVAC world. It doesn't matter what your walk of life is, what your gender is, doesn't matter. If you need help with something, you reach out to us and we help, period. End of story. And then we also have a free 24/7 tech support line that goes along with that. You don't have to be a member of HVA-Chicks or a student. You can just call it anytime. I will give the number to you so that you can put it in the show notes. But yeah, that's who I am. And I'm a mom of 6. I homeschool 10 kids for free, and I'm just an animal. I like to be busy.
That is insane. Oh my gosh. And so you left out something that just happened, right? Right? I mean, you have some bling.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I don't actually have it here, and I wish I did. But I am this year's Lady of the Trade, HVAC Tactical, and I'm also Malco's Trade Pro of the Year, one of the 5 Trade Pros of the Year that Malco chose. So that's pretty cool. And I just started writing for HVAC school too.
Okay. Anything else that you've anything
No,
else
I'm
that
good.
you
That's
run?
it.
You run a school. And how does this? Let me ask you, because here's the deal. I'm so excited about this because you obviously being a female in the trade, trailblazing this whole thing, along with, gosh, I mean it's blown up like wildfire. I'm curious, because you have to overcome the dichotomy in every single call. And for those, and somebody commented on one of these threads earlier today and was like, oh yeah, how does she run all those, how does she fix a capacitor with those nails on and whatever else? And
these are the nails, babies. These are the real live nails. So for the tactical awards and the pictures that we chose, I had stick-ons, and I actually did those sitting in my hotel room the night of the tactical awards with Brett Wetzel and Ryan Hughes and my husband Val. And they were all making fun of me the whole time because I couldn't do it right and it was stupid and I'm not a girl and all these things. And then I got them on and I looked over and I was like, hey, I wonder what my room system is. So I grabbed a butter knife because they don't let you have tools on the plane, So I'm over there with my butter knife and my long ass nails trying to like open this up. And I got it open and I found the coolest, like, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a hydronic heat pump. It's not a water source heat pump. It's not a chiller. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And it's awesome. It's in Chicago hotel rooms. But yeah, I'll post a link to that too in one of your groups because it's awesome. But yeah, so that is the true backstory to those horrific nails. And then they wouldn't come off for AHR, so I was stuck with them. It was awful.
and then you were able to pry them off.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I was saying was, and so the way this sort of is, like, it's just completely unscripted, it's unedited. Whatever you say can and will be, used against you in a court of social media law, right?
Count on it.
Yeah. So what I was saying was, because obviously, being this is, so I was in this house, sales tales, the idea here was, to get sort of an inside view on our experiences in the field. And you have to overcome a dichotomy every single time, you go into, fix somebody's, system or whatever it is. Talk about that for a
100%.
second, and roll into like, and what I'd like to hear is kind of the coolest or, you know, best, you know, tale that you have in regards to like walking up, being behind the eight ball. Someone's like, who are you?
Yeah, it happens all the time. So that is a struggle. And it's a struggle that as women in the trade, we don't think about the fact that you guys don't have it. We just think about getting through it. Every single call is something we have to get through. And it sucks because half of our battle is before we ever see the system. Right. So, you know, I will lead into plenty. I've had plenty, trust me. But one example is, so when I first started in this trade, and I was lucky enough to get hired by the same guy that my husband worked for at the time. And he even let my husband train me, which was awesome. So
Oh,
we
that
get to
must have
this
been fun.
house, and yeah, it was actually awesome. Until it wasn't. So we get to this house and we go in, and I'm the helper in this situation. I'm still learning. I'm in my service apprenticeship, right? So we go in, and this guy, just immediately when I walk in, he just starts just daggers right in my direction. And I mean, the whole time. And he was a hoverer. We all know those. So he's standing there with us the entire time in his cat pee infested basement while Val is training me and telling me, you know, we're changing a gas valve. So it had been something that I had done before, luckily. So he was like, okay, I don't need to, you know, go any further than that. Here, do it. And so Val's like standing with this guy, and I'm like on the floor changing the gas valve in the spoiler. And the guy literally looks at Val, and he was like, I don't know why she's here. And Val's like, what are you talking about? She's changing your gas valve. What do you mean you don't know why she's here? He's like, no, but why her? And he's like, because she works here. I don't know what you mean. So Val brushed it off. Well, it turns out that this motherfucker, excuse my French, really called my boss and said, I am not paying for her. I cannot believe you sent a woman here to degrade me and humiliate me. And I am not paying for her to do that. I'm not that kind of guy. So if you want to come here and rip out what she did and put it back, then I'll pay you for the job. But I'm not paying you because she did it, which obviously my boss had choice words for and dealt with that separately. But it wasn't the only time, wasn't the first time. It was just the worst time. It was if I could explain this man's face when I was in his presence, it was literally one of those situations where I knew for a fact if Val wasn't there and I was in that basement, I would have needed an exit strategy. It was that bad. And I think that was the first time that I felt unsafe in a customer's home. That was the first time. Like I knew Val was there to protect me, so I really wasn't afraid, but I felt unsafe 100%. So, and that's not the first time. And we think about the dichotomy that we have to overcome as, you know, oh, dudes just, you know, talk shit about women or talk shit to them or make them feel smaller or whatever it might be. But it's not. There are situations where they literally want to harm us physically. So that's the worst thing I've had to overcome.
But what was this
But
guy?
then
What was the guy's deal? What was his deal? Like,
some what I've found from being in this trade so long and going on my own so many times is that some men just don't like women. And I mean, I do all of these things. Like I went to the symposium and spoke on the women's panel, and I've done podcast after podcast, and we're always trying to teach men how to be with the women in this field, or we're trying to teach them while we're here so that it will overcome that adversity, right? But some men you just can't. Some men just hate
mm,
women. It's so deep rooted. It's their mama didn't hug them enough, whatever it might be, but it is so deep that you just can't overcome it. And I've actually had many customers that were that way. I've had many customers who were the opposite. Like I've had customers who were like, you're the most amazing girl in the whole world. I can't wait for you to fix my shit. And then I've had guys who were like, there's over my dead body. Are you walking in here? So it's definitely it's a scrapbook of craziness, but for
so
some
what
reason
was
I
all
still
right?
find it worth it.
So what was the biggest? So what was the biggest turnaround? Like you walk in and like or a scenario where it was like, okay, like, you know, this is crazy. What's happening here? You have any of
Yeah.
those situations where you're like, what the
Yeah,
heck's going on?
absolutely. So I actually have one where I actually did leave, and it was a woman. So I got to this Chinese restaurant that I was supposed to be changing an evaporator in, and this woman was the manager of this Chinese restaurant, which is a pretty solid role in management, right? You know, it's a leadership role. So in a million years, never did I think this woman would be a problem. But walking in here, same deal. She was just super weird to me, like wouldn't talk directly to me. And then when I was left there by myself, I was left there to change this evaporator, and it's just her and I. And she literally came into the walk-in and she was like, question after question, like, why do you do this? Are they forcing you to do this? Are they making you do this? You don't belong here. You just go get a nursing job. You shouldn't be here. I'm gonna call Ben. Ben is my boss at the time. So she calls Ben at my boss, and my boss says, she's the boss. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't own this company. She does. What is wrong with you? And I didn't at the time. And the whole time I'm listening to her outside the walk-in door, telling all of these waiters and waitresses and yada, yada, yada. She's a boy. She wants to be a boy. She wants to have a, what between her legs, she physically said. And I came out and I was like, do I need to explain it to you? Like, or can you shut up? And she's like, go ahead, go ahead. And she crowds everybody around in the kitchen. And she's like, tell us how you want to be a boy. And I'm like, this is fucking nuts. This is nuts. So I looked at her, I said, okay, in your country, your job is a man's job. And you came here and you overcame that and you are in a leadership role. That is all I'm doing here. And she's like, okay, if you want to be a boy, go in there and be a boy. And she shuts the walk-in door on me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And I left. And I found out as I was leaving, so we had pulled the old walk-in out off the wall and put it outside, right? And we're like, okay, so the scrap guy will come and get it or whatever. But we're supposed to take pictures of it. We're supposed to, document all of that. So I go, as I'm leaving, and I'm like, fuck this place. I'm like, oh, I should take a picture of that walk-in. So I go around and I check the evaporator and it's gone. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I see her husband rolling out of the place with it in the back of his truck, like as fast as he can, when we had just taken it off of the wall. Like everything about this call was bizarre. And it's so messed up because everybody expects me to tell a story about a dude and it is not. But yeah, that was the craziest one where I was really like confused and was like, I can't go any further here. Like, this is freaking me out. But yeah, I've gotten such an array. I mean, I've gotten it from male customers who think I am the best thing in the world and want to support me and ask how they can encourage me and how they can help my coalition and all these things, to men who would rather die than lay eyes on me, to women who call me and say, hey, I saw you in the paper when you won the Malco thing, and I called my guy and I fired him so that you could come and work on my system, never having met me, nothing, And then I have women who, like this woman, just think that it is absolutely a man's role and I do not belong in it, and they just won't let up.
So how many, so you had to guess, like, so how many years have you been doing this?
I've been doing it on my own for 6 years, but I've been in the trade for 14. So.
Okay. So 14 years in the trade by yourself, 6 years. So 14 years ago, you started out like just literally as a helper. So
yeah,
so it's thousands and thousands of calls over the course
Absolutely.
of.
And I've never had one just be normal, ever. I cannot think of one call where I walked into the house, they said, hey, it's great to see you. Here's my system. And I fixed it and I left. There's not one.
Do you just walk in and go like, yes, okay, I'm your service technician. Like, okay, it's me. I'm really good at this. You're going to have to trust me. I know what I'm doing. You're going to have to just trust me on this one.
I think that a lot of my personality has been forged because of this. And so like earlier with the guy with the nails, like that doesn't bother me at all. Like, it's just something that I'm so used to that I like I walk in and I introduce myself and I am so overly bubbly because I feel like it's either going to drive them more crazy if they already hate me, or it's going to make them really like me if they already like me, So, oh crap. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Phone's dying.
Well, that's it, folks.
So
we got to wrap it up here.
So now I just literally like go in and I just be my like whole crazy bubbly self, and most of them like it at this point. And at this point too, I have the confidence. So this is another thing. You don't build confidence by people treating you like shit every time you walk into their house for 14 years, but somehow I've managed to do that. So now I'm super confident. I know that for a fact, there's nothing I can't fix. I own a tech support line with 100% close rate. Like, I know what I'm doing and I'm not going to be wrong, So that's helped a lot, I think. And I actually have noticed in the last few years that it's not as bad anymore. Like, I think they smelled it on me. Like, they knew I was afraid of them. Like, like
that's
dogs
true. You
smell
have to
fear.
Yeah, I would imagine if you exude confidence. So you're in Maine. It's awfully cold up there. are there unique situations that like, because of how like, either have you been, you get any backwoods near you? Like, I mean,
Oh, I'm
have
in
you,
the backwoods.
oh yeah.
I'm
Tell,
deep in
all
the
right, all right, all right.
backwoods.
Tell me this. Tell me this. Tell me the most backwoodsy customer experience that you've had. The most hickish. Like, I need.
Okay, so so I am in, you guys, just to give you like a geographical standpoint, I am in Lakes Region, Maine. So this is the woodsiest part of Maine, other than the part that's on the border of Canada. So this is, I'm 4 hours from Canada as it is. Like, so I am in the sticks straight up. So a
You're
lot of what
Canadian.
we see, I'm Canadian, I'm half Canadian. So a lot of what we see is systems that exude that, right? So here the problem is, and I mean in my town specifically in Naples, Maine, there was one company before I opened mine. There was one company here. And then they closed their doors right after I opened. So it worked out perfect for me, like beautifully. But the problem is, as a company is getting ready to close their doors, they just don't give a shit, right? So there were like times where they would call a tech and nobody would ever come, or they'd call a tech and nobody from the actual company could come, but the owner's brother's boss's boyfriend could come, and so it's terrible. But a lot of what we see is these makeshift systems. So the best thing I ever saw was at a weed grow. Okay. I actually, like, small tip, nobody knows this, so you heard it here first. The room I'm sitting in right now is my office, and I bought this giant office, right? It has a school in it, it has a warehouse in it, it has a bunch of offices, industrial kitchen, whole 9 yards. This is the building where this happened, because this used to be a weed grow that I used to service.
Hold on.
So
You bought your backwoods customers building.
yep,
Okay.
I
Okay.
bought his
Now,
weed
okay.
grow.
Okay.
So the best thing was, and there are videos of this on my TikTok, you guys can all go look at it after. So with weed grows, you need AC all year, right? But like you said, it's fucking freezing here all the time. So 9 months out of the year, it's winter. And then we get 3 months of summer. There's no spring, there's no fall, period. So for weed grows, it becomes difficult if you can't get somebody to come out here and you don't have a low ambient kit or blah, blah, blah. So this one guy, we told him, you have condensers outside. It's freezing. You need low ambient kits. These things went down to like 10. We're at -20 half of the time here. I'm like, that's not going to work. You can't do this. So he doesn't do it because he's a cheapo, right? So instead, what does he do? So he calls me up and he's like, oh, the second unit down is broke down. And I'm like, all right. So I get there and I look down the row of units and they're all wrapped in bubble wrap, first of all. And I'm like, this motherfucker, I told you don't do this. This is so bad. But then I look over and I see one lonely unit with a giant tarp over it, and it's running, a giant tarp over it, and space heaters inside it, pointed right at the coil, like electric space heaters that are plugged into extension cords that run out the building. And I'm like, what is going on here? You didn't call me about this unit. What the hell? So I let it go and I went and I fixed the problem, which was a junk compressor, for the third time in this one unit, because he just keeps bubble wrapping his units and letting me replace the compressor for, $2,000 every year. But yeah, so then I called him up and I'm like, what's up with this other unit? Why is there a tarp and it looks like a homeless shelter under this unit? And he goes, oh, because the coil frosted up and then it shut off. I was like, it shut off. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you mean it went into defrost? And he's like, oh, do those have defrost? So his coil iced up. He stuck 2 space heaters under it and a giant tarp instead of just letting it run through its own defrost cycle. The next spring, 2 months later, that compressor was so toast that there was acid all the way coming out of the evaporator. It was so bad. So yeah, that was the worst one I've seen, because it's like you're trying to save your material in your weed grow only to then lose it because you were dumb,
Yeah. You find a lot of people that want to prolong the life of whatever it is, and they find such crafty ways to try to extend the life on things.
Yeah. This lobster tank place that I'm at, we have a lobster market that we just acquired about a year ago, and this place is the best for that.
Lobster.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
lobster market. Okay. So
And
basically they have,
you service the lobster market.
yeah, we service and do all of their retrofits and replacements.
Okay.
So basically it's a giant lobster market. And then it's got like big tanks of lobsters, you know, and it's got tank chillers for that. And it's got a big giant like low temp room and for the like super low temp. And then it's got a regular cooler that's 2 rooms.
Yeah.
Right. So when we first got there, all 3 chillers for the tanks. It's 3 chillers for the tanks. So first of all, they're not chillers. They're ACs. They're AC condensers. And then, yeah, and then water evaporators, water cooler evaporators. So we get there and we see that, and that's like, oh, this is crazy. Well, then we find out that they're all 20 years old, roughly. They're all R22, whole 9 yards, and they're all
For those of you
cycling.
that don't, yeah, for those of you, you're talking a lot of tech talk, and like, I mean, I love it. No, it's okay. I think there's a lot. There are people here who like in plumbing and other fields and roofing, whatever it is. So all right,
phased out refrigerant.
Yeah. So this unit's old and it doesn't work on it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's old and it's an air conditioner, not a lobster tank chiller. Okay.
Right. They're using a lobster to cool lobsters in a tank. They're using what they should be using is a specific machine, and they're using an actual central air conditioning unit to cool the water. Right. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. So, okay.
It's so much funnier when you say it.
So we're painting a picture here of this is the epitome of like, you know, ingenuity and just like half-assing something.
And this isn't even the best yet. They were used when they got them. So with phased out refrigerant, old as dirt, and not the right equipment, and they're used. Okay. So then on top of that, when we get there, they're like, oh, this one chiller's down and we can't figure out why. So, you know, we're like, okay, we'll diagnose it. And we're there for like 3 hours before we realize that every single one of them is wired to the same temp control. So there's one temp control when it satisfies. So what that means is that in the tank, when the water gets to a certain temperature, this temp control is shutting all of the units off. What it's supposed to be is a temp control.
But we can't figure it out.
Unit.
We don't know what's.
So they don't know why it's so warm. I don't know why it's 45 degrees in my lobster water, they say. So every single time this water hits a certain set point, it's cutting off all the machines. And so they don't come on until this one at the top surface of the tank comes back on. So this is all happening. So we go back and we undo all of that, obviously, get them their own temp sensors, whole 9 yards. About 3 months later, I go to do the maintenance on them after they had concrete work done. Guess who didn't wrap their units before getting concrete work done? And so what happens is the concrete dust blows into the coils and it has lye in it. So it eats the coils. So we're talking 20-year-old coils already. And this lye just ate holes in it. I take the panels off and it's just holes everywhere. There's videos of that on my social media too, guys. But yeah, there's just oil everywhere. It's whole 9 yards. So now we're replacing them, right? So then they want to fight with me about the price of the new lobster tank chillers.
Yeah, but of course you do. Because of course that's the natural thing to do, is to fight about the price.
So, yeah. So I say, okay, whatever. Order them yourself.
Jennifer, it's too expensive.
Yeah, it's too expensive to have our millions of dollars worth of lobster alive, you know? So I say to them, okay, I'm going to make a deal with you. I do not install customer supplied equipment. I don't do it, period. Not for any reason, except for this reason. So they're a killer service, you know, contract for me. They have made me probably 1/3 of my revenue this year. So I'm like, whatever, buy the units that you want and I'll put them in for you. Here's the quote to put them in. Obviously I jacked up the labor because now it's the fuck you price, right? So I say, all right.
Jennifer, for those that don't know, what is the fuck you price? Just kidding. Go ahead.
Y'all know what the fuck you price is. So then I say, okay, if you want to take the fuck you price and you want to order your own units, I'll put them in. What do? They order.
They signed you up. They bought the wrong units. They bought the wrong units.
So then I'm like, whatever, I'll put them in. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I'll even service them. Perfect.
Wow.
What happens? Yeah. I go to take off the electrical
They're gonna
panels
break.
And they're strip models. There's no parts in them.
Oh, no way. So they really cheaped out. Okay.
So
now did you sell them?
Order all of your parts for extra money for 100% markup, and then you can pay me to put them in. And guess what?
Yeah.
It's now totals about $2,000 more than it originally would have if you just took my goddamn quote.
See, being cheap does not pay, because Jennifer will come by and she will charge you the fuck you price after you completely screw the whole thing up. Wow.
100%. Yeah. So I mean, I could go on for days about the hick shit I see.
So that's some cool. That's actually really funny. It sounds like you do a lot of refrigeration for like restaurants and for like food
I do.
companies.
I do a lot of everything.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you're obviously so technically inclined. Like, I mean, you know it all. So so let me ask you this. So what is your like horror restaurant? Like, I've heard stuff. I've heard stuff about ice machines. I've heard stuff like, I mean, mold. What is your horror restaurant story?
So normally, and this is going to, any of my followers watching this are going to be like, you're a liar. You hate ice machines. And that's what you should have said. I do, for the record, hate ice machines. I'm disgusted by them. Ice machine boogers are a thing, and they serve the ice in bars, and it's fucking terrible. I hate it. Okay. I will say that as a disclaimer. But the worst one that I have ever encountered was a pizza place, and it was the walk-in. Okay. And they have a problem with, just like every other pizza place, leaving the walk-in door open. So everything goes warm. It's a whole thing. Right. So, so I don't even know if I could talk about this. I'm so disgusted.
You gotta talk about it. And for those that don't know what a walk-in is, I mean, most people know what a walk-in is, but yeah, it's a big freaking refrigerator. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a room size refrigerator. So it's running warm. That's the call. Walk-in running warm pizza place. So I go there. I see the door gasket is ripped off in some places, and the door's open when I get there, literally tied open, which is the worst thing you can do. So what that does is it makes your unit run constant. It ices up the unit. It causes humidity, which then freezes, causes icing, right? So just for those you who don't know. So I'm like, okay, I see where this is going, right? So, and then I go in there and I'm like, what smells so fucking horrific in this place? And I go to turn the light on and the light's not working. So I'm like, okay, I got a flashlight, but I have to do something in here. I'm going to do better than that. So I go over to Home Depot and I get the stuff to change the light out, right? The light switch out. So I pull off the light switch off the wall, and it pours out chicken juice. Oh, the smelliest chicken juice I've ever encountered in my lifetime.
Wait, so like, down into
the light switch housing. So like the junction box in there where your light switch goes.
Yeah.
Full. Like I pulled the cover off, and it
it was in the top. Was it in the top of the cooler?
So it was. So what happened was they stacked these racks up so close to the evaporator that it completely smothered it, stopped the fans, whole 9 yards, went warm, grossness. What had happened at that point is these boxes and bags of chickens just thawed out and dripped everywhere. And at first I was like, it's just condensation. It's okay. It's just water. But when I finally got that light turned on, it was one of the bags had gotten caught in the coil. Like the coil had tried to suck the bag in or turned it around somehow. And it had gotten stuck in the coil. And when they tried to like get it out of there, they ripped it open and just left it on the top of the rack. So there's chicken juice now from a 50-pound bag of chicken, of marinating chicken, has just all over the walls, all over the floor. When I finally got the light on, it was frozen to the floor like a fucking nasty chicken juice ice rink. It was disgusting.
Oh my God. It was coating the floor. It was coating the floor. It was frozen.
An ice rink. Yes. And there is even spices in it. It was marinating. It's spicy, nasty chicken juice that's been there for a fucking month. So I go out of the walk-in and I go to the manager and I bring her over and I see like this. And she's like, oh my God, how did nobody notice that? I said, well, your light switch was broken. And she's like, they couldn't smell it. I'm like, you'll have to ask them that. But my price to clean this is going to be way more than you could ever afford. So you're going to have to get somebody in here to clean it.
It's going to be the fuck. It's going to be the fuck you price. Oh, it was, you didn't even give them the fuck you price.
Oh, no. There's no fuck you price in the world. There's worth the chicken juice.
So they'd have to make sure it was thawed out and empty the whole thing out and then scrape everything out. Yep. And it must have smelled so bad. And that's what they did. They took videos of it that they showed me of them taking these big, it was like a broom handle that they stuck like a paint scraper on. And that's how they got it off the floor. That's how bad it was. Oh, so after it's completely cleaned out and they wipe it all down, they hire a cleaning company to come in because salmonella is a thing. Luckily it was chicken. Luckily for me, it was chicken. Yeah. So they have the salmonella hazardous people come in and clean it all out. And then I get to go in and replace it because what happened was whenever that bag got sucked in there somehow from the front or the back, I don't know how it gets sucked in from the back, but from the front, either way, it got sucked in and then went through the coil and tore, right? So it
destroyed both fan blades and their motors. And when it overamped, it cooked the entire electrical compartment.
Yeah,
So
it
I had to
smoked it.
replace it at that point. So I was like, wow, it's kind of nice being in here. Like day one, brand new walk-in. But yeah, it was horrible the first time. I literally opened, and I'll never forget. I had my screwdriver, and I like, you got your two little screws on the light switch, right? And I did that, and it started pouring a little bit. And I'm like, huh. So dummy ass me goes, let me unscrew the other one. And the second I did, it was like, it was horrible.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, just, I mean, of course it happened, right? Of course.
Oh my gosh. Oh
Yeah.
man. And did you get the chicken juice all over you? Were you underneath
Oh,
the
yes.
were you oh
Oh, yes.
oh
I had chicken juice in my hair. I had chicken juice on my face. When I went to kick the motor on, it didn't come on, obviously. So the evaporator on, it didn't come on with the switch, obviously. So I took the fan blade like this and went like that just to see if it was seized, and it sprayed chicken juice all over my face.
oh oh my
Yeah.
gosh. What kind of restaurant was it?
A pizza place. It was
Oh,
this
that's
place
right.
is notorious for dirtiness. It's weird because it's only the refrigeration equipment that's dirty, but it's dirty. Like their coils, I had to use 409 on their coils and a control screwdriver on their pizza tables. They had like flour and bread like that had dropped into the coil. So the whole time they're like, I had a colleague that was like trying to charge the unit like it was a charge issue and like all this shit, and I kick it out with my foot, and I'm like, that's encased in bread dough, bro. This is a bun of a coil. Like, you need to clean that. So yeah, it was disgusting. But it's like, I'm talking grease like you've never seen before. It's disgusting. I hate kitchens. I hate working in kitchens. I hate refrigeration. I really do. I always say this. This is my motto. The R in HVACR stands for rage, and that is 100% true.
That's I like that. I'm gonna use that. So what percentage of your business is like residential? I'm trying to get a gauge of how much time you spend in people's homes.
Yeah. So I can't even say most. So basically we do everything. We do resi, commercial, and industrial, and we do design, we do engineering. I'm an engineer too, so I have my own firm. We do
Oh,
that.
wow.
We do install, retrofit, replacement, service, you name it. And there's only 3 of us. So splitting that work up, lately it's been Val and my son in homes more than I have been. But yeah, most of my life is spent in homes. So most of my job is actually hydronics. So that's my specialty.
Oh,
And
I missed hydronics.
it's the best. There's
For
nothing
those of
like
you
it.
For those of you that don't know what hydronics are, they are systems that will heat a home essentially with water. That's
Yeah.
basically it's piped HVAC systems.
Right. So you've
So
got boilers, you've got radiant, and you've got
radiators,
chillers, basically, at
yeah.
that point. Right. So
Mm.
yeah, that's my specialty. That is the thing that I love the most, and that is the thing that I do the most. So, and a lot of that is residential. I do some industrial design, but I don't actually touch industrial systems much. But yeah, most of it is residential hydronics.
Have you, let me ask you this, and speaking, it just got my brain pumping here. Have you been on any calls where like what's the percentage of like, really, like what's the craziest, like from a safety standpoint that you've been in, like unsafe situation, gas, whatever it is. Tell me about that. Oh, this is
Are you
funny, apparently.
OSHA? Oh, nice try, OSHA. No, just kidding. um, from a safety standpoint, I'll tell you this story. And if anybody goes and collects their 10K from the EPA on me, you're dead meat. I'm gonna hunt you down. So I should start by saying it was my 3rd day on the job in HVAC. And it was my husband and I, and we were working at this place called Macucci's. It's the oldest like Italian grocery, like they take it in trucks to different restaurants, like whatever. So this is their warehouse, and it's older than dirt, but it's like super popular, and you have to do a really good job there. So there's like 130 roughly feet ladder to the roof hatch. So like a cage ladder. So we're up on the roof and we're trying to find a leak in the system. And I, on my 3rd day, find this leak. And these are big, bad boy, low temp refrigeration systems. I'm talking like reed valve compressors, not like scrolls. You know what I mean? Like I'm talking big industrial systems. And they're low temp. They're -20, low temp. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to find this leak and I'm going to be the hero and it's going to be great. And so I find the leak and it's great. However, the system's flat, or so I think.
Okay. So flat means there's no refrigerant in the system.
Yes.
Okay.
So I thought there was no refrigerant in the system. Little did I know there was a king valve, which I had no idea what the hell that was at the time. But what ended up happening, long story short, is I fixed the leak. I brazed it. It was beautiful, whole 9 yards, and I recharged the system. Well, at one point, I went to close the king valve and I accidentally turned it the wrong way. And as I'm cranking it with my service wrench, I get about maybe 50 pounds of R22 sprayed directly at my face on the edge of a roof, not tied off. So for the record, you guys, you got a service wrench in your hand like this and you're, spinning it. And as you're doing that, it's harder and harder, right? So when it opens, this is refrigerant. This is so cold that it burns you the second it touches you. I mean, you're talking bubbles of injuries that people get. Like, it's horrible. You can like literally get horribly injured from this stuff. And this is the worst one to get, other than like maybe R12, right? And it's also illegal to be in the atmosphere. And I'm talking de minimis. I believe the de minimis rule is like 1 PSI. And I'm talking 50 pounds at least. I loosed out into the atmosphere. So as I'm doing it, Val's like, stop, like, because at first it was turn it the other way, you know what I mean? But then at a certain point, he's like, stop, get out of there. You can't, like,
too late.
You can't,
too late.
You're gonna get hurt. So I go
50
to blow
pounds.
back, 50 pounds. So I blow back.
I want to put that in perspective.
You
had 50 pounds of refrigerant, okay, Freon, okay, pouring at you. To give you an idea, this is an industrial machine. To give you an idea, the average, what would you say the average residential unit has in pounds of refrigerant?
Like between 6 and 13, typically.
Yeah, like let's call it, like, even if we call it 10, that's like 5 houses. Yeah, 10 or 20. That's like 10 or 20 houses worth of refrigerant pouring out of the machine, burning.
Picture like in a movie when a steam boiler blows up and you get that big like cloud.
Wait. Yeah, they have that scene.
Refrigerant.
They have that scene where the guy shoots that thing and like all the steam bursts everywhere. Like that was what it was.
Right. This is what it was. So I'm in there with a service wrench now, still trying to close it like an idiot. Like, this stuff isn't burning me and I can't feel it. I'm eating it. And it's just, I got so lucky because I got no bubbles, but I did have burns up almost all of my arm and the side of my face. It was terrible. But as I go to jump back from it, because Val's like, stop, we're losing it. We're done. You can't fix it. Like, you're going to die. Get out of there. So I jump back and I'm on the edge of a roof. I'm on the edge of a 130-foot roof and I'm not tied off. This is a flat roof. So I'm working on systems in the middle. When I like open my eyes, Val's grabbing me like this, grabs the back of my arm and throws me back onto the roof. It was by far the scariest and by far the most dangerous situation I ever could have put myself in.
Wait, was your part of your body off of the roof?
So like my back and my butt were off the roof, but I was like crouched down like this. And he like grabbed me and like threw me, because if I didn't even stop falling yet. So if I had just finished falling, it would have been off the roof. It was terrible. It was
how high up were you?
Thing I've ever done. Like 130 feet. It's 130 feet from bottom to top. So
that's game over. Wow. That's lights
game
out.
Over for sure. By far.
Oh my God.
I would have been dead before I hit the ground.
You must have, and let me ask you, in that moment though, because so much was going on.
Yeah.
Did you thank him, or was it more like, okay, like,
no, so
you didn't even thank him.
I didn't even thank him.
Oh my God.
For me, I felt bad. That's what it was. I felt bad about losing the refrigerant.
Right, because it was your second or third day in the field. Oh,
right. And I'm like, my pride is demolished. And I'm like, I'm okay. Stop talking about me. I'm fine. Look what I just did. The EPA is going to be on my ass. And blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So yeah, I really felt horrible about losing that much refrigerant. And I happen to be one of those climate people, like not super diehard, but if I can, I will, stop global warming, but
are
I
you
really
saying that
added about.
are you saying that you don't want to release 50 pounds of toxic refrigerant into the air? Is that what you're saying? That you're anti that? You're anti that?
I'm anti over 8 million GWP back into the atmosphere.
Wow.
The sole cause of climate change is me right now. So
yeah, it's your
yeah,
fault.
it was bad. It was so bad. That's
You're
by
the
far the
1
worst
degree.
day ever. I'm the 1 degree. Yep.
I was just thinking about this story where it actually didn't happen directly to me, but there was a steam boiler in this old guy's house. So I'm from New Jersey. I live in Dallas, and outside of Dallas. Anyway, so I'm used to the cold climate. I had a friend who moved up to Maine. Actually, it's about a 6-7 hour drive. So, so this guy, old guy, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of flooding in the area. He had a steamer. The steamer wasn't operating properly. They went down. The gas company got there. He had a company out there. The company actually said, "Look, man, it's not working right." And then the gas company went down there and they shut him off. They just shut him off, right? They didn't cut the gas valve off though. Okay, so they just shut the gas off to the house because of how unsafe it was. Well, it was an older guy, and like a neighbor came by and said, "Hey man, it was like 20 degrees, 15 degrees." And they're like, you need some heat. And they turned it on for him, and it ran. And he said something was wrong. He called the gas company. Gas company walked downstairs. And as they walked downstairs, I couldn't believe this. The steamer was overpressurized, and it exploded. And those guys, one guy was a couple weeks off for retirement, and one was actually a newer guy, and he was engaged to get married. And they both,
oh no,
it was right after Hurricane Irene.
Yeah,
it was after Irene or after Sandy. And I don't think people think about the safety aspect of things sometimes, especially when you're talking about these half-assed people who are like doing all these crazy, things with,
like bubblegum and fucking duct tape. It's terrifying. But I will say that steam is a very underrated, deadly thing. Like, people think about refrigerant, people think about toxic, chemicals, and people think about even water boilers. Like, people are afraid of industrial water boilers. People need to be afraid of steam. I've seen a lot of horrible shit happen with steam. Steam is my baby because I know what I'm doing. But there have been times where I've hid behind a door when starting up a steam boiler because I'm not stupid, there's other times where I'm like, oh, I'll just, Val will be like, get back. And I'll be like, why, Val? Like, cause I know it's not going to happen. But at the same time, you really should never fuck with it like that. Like, you really never should. I never should. It has definitely humbled me.
You brought something up. And it's got me thinking too, because I asked everybody this so far, but like, you say you're in a bunch of houses, you obviously do a lot of, commercial work and whatnot. But I was thinking, like, is there some person that you've had, like maybe a customer that you've been in their house where you can just think to yourself, like, this was a life-changing story. Like, this was a life-changing house.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, wow. You're getting teared up.
So it's not often that an entire family embraces me, right? Sometimes it's the wife, sometimes it's the husband. The wife doesn't want me in the house alone with the husband. It seems like a really badly written porno that the HVAC girl shows up and, and the husband either just doesn't want me there or really wants me there to gawk at me, so it never happens that everybody in the family really embraces me. And when I was first starting out, I was probably 6 months in. I was on my own, so probably about 6 months in. I showed up at this house and they had a little baby, like maybe 3-4 months old, super, super new baby. And the wife was in the bedroom with a like space heater or some form of, portable heat because the house was so cold. And he said that they had run out of gas and the gas company came and filled it, but then they shut them off. Same reason. They said their boiler was not safe.
So this was propane. They had a propane tank outside, and okay. Gotcha.
Yep. And they shut them off at the tank. They shut off the gas valve. They did all of that. So in order to unred tag it, I had to do a complete inspection. So that's what I did. And I found the heat exchanger was not actually bad. So the heat exchanger is the part that if it's cracked, you die from carbon monoxide poisoning, basically, guys. So this is what they told him. They told him it was cracked and that it was dangerous. Come to find out, their bill was $5,000 or so just for a diagnosis. And I think they changed the board, maybe, if that. And then they were telling them, well, you need to replace the whole system now because now the heat exchanger is cracked now. And so I thought that was weird, which is why I even looked. Any other time I'd be like, it's not safe. It's not safe. I'm not turning it on for you, you know? So I did look, and come to find out, the gas company was trying to get the HVAC sale. And so they were upcharging everything and telling them more things were wrong than were. So I was able to find the actual problem, which was a faulty gas valve. I was able to replace it, and I got them back up and running. And I knew nothing about their backstory whatsoever. But come to find out, mom had been diagnosed with cancer when she gave birth. So we're talking a couple months before that, but also has this newborn that she's taking care of. And for the last 2 weeks, they've had no heat. She's been sick from chemo, and it's just all this shit. And the dad's like killing himself trying to keep everybody sane and happy and fed and warm. And it was one of those situations where I didn't need to know any of that. They didn't have to tell me any of that, and they probably wouldn't have told anybody else. But when I came back up the stairs and said, your baseboards are on, like, you're good to go, every single one of them just like immediately took to me. And the wife is what sticks with me the most, because she said, I really wanted to come out and say hi to you, and I don't want you to think that it's because I wanted to watch you with my husband, because I didn't feel that way about you at all. She said, but I felt so bad that I couldn't get up out of bed to come and say hi to you. So that's why I asked my husband, you know, to have you come in here. And so I went in, I sat on her bed with her, and I held her baby and like whatever. And I told her what was wrong and why they did it. And she just started crying, and she was like, you know what? We're going to be warm. And that's because of you. And anybody else would have told you to go away because you're a girl. And I didn't do that. And I didn't get mad because, you know, you were with my husband alone. And because of that, I'm being rewarded now by having heat. And for this woman, I do get teary about this. For this woman who is going through so much detrimental shit, who is terminal, who thinks she's going to die any minute now, who has a brand new baby she'll never see grow up, says to me that she should be grateful for me, and that, you know, somehow her karma points came back and brought me. That was probably the most profound and the most deep-seated love story I've ever had with HVAC, for sure.
When you went into your car after that call and you went home, and through the years, like, do you think tell me about, like, does it resonate? Like, how does it? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It never leaves you. So today, for instance, I was on a podcast with Brian Orr, and he asked me a question. He said,
"Your second podcast today? What the heck?"
Yeah, you are. So he said to me, he said, like, how do you manage to not be like you're always so accepting of other women, and you never get jealous, and you're never like feuding with anybody, and like, how do you manage to stay like that? And I had to tell him that I had to shed my ego years ago to deal with something. And that story that I just told you is what I was talking about. That moment made me shed every single bit of selfishness that I ever had. It made me really not think about myself ever again, because if this woman cannot be thinking about herself, then why the fuck am I? You know? And I think throughout the years, it's actually changed my personality fundamentally, that conversation that I had with her, because I have been 100% more grateful for everything that I have and everything that I do since that moment. It stays with you forever, forever and ever.
Such a unique, this is why I wanted to do this, because there's so many of these. I want to share with you a life-changing moment that I had. I'll share with. I met this woman who she was a World War II. She was actually a citizen. She was in Germany, and she was like 16 years old. And she met this guy who was a soldier there, and the American soldiers were there at the time. This is 1940s, and they were trying to liberate this area. And this woman at the time is like 84, 85 years old. And she's telling me this, you know, this story about how she met her husband. And it turns out there was some kind of a ball, a gala, if you will, that they held with the Germans that were, not Nazis. And there were, there were a village, and then there was uh, there was these American soldiers, and they had this ball. And so she had really fancied this guy, and she was like 16 or 17 years old. And she goes up to this guy, and she's like, barely, not great. English is not great. And she asks him to dance, and he says, oh, well, kid, you're a little young for me, but my buddy over there, he's really, he's really into you. And they danced. And apparently what happened was they just magically fell in love. And I asked her about this moment, and she said, the world just stopped. And it was as if like everything was in slow motion. And I knew in this minute that, in this moment, that I was going to marry this guy. I was going to be with this guy.
Aww.
And this, again, World War II, like Nazi Germany, they're trying to get out of there.
Going off.
Crazy, right? So turns out they fall in love. She tells her he has to go back to the States, and she is trying to devise a plan. She says, Dad, I'm going to go and marry this guy, but I got to get to Berlin. And he's like, there's Red Armies out here. There's always soldiers out here. It's, it's crazy. The Nazis are still not, I mean, this is late in the war, but so she goes, Dad, I'm going with you or without you. And so she does. And he helps her to get to this village outside of Berlin, and they get married in secret in this little stone church. And then there's rules. The United States government had rules that if you married a U.S. citizen, and you were a foreign citizen, you actually had to have you had immediately flown back to the United States of America.
Yeah.
And
your own country.
You could have no contact for 3 years. So what happened was she married this guy in the church outside of Berlin, got to the base, the American base, flew back to the States. But in order for him to get back there, he had to actually take a contract for a year to stay there. So she lived with his family, whom she had never met, in America, leaving everything she ever knew behind in Germany, while he stayed for a year in Germany and finished his tour of duty.
He finally think of how Americans viewed Germans at that point too. So she's still a German to them,
And she told me they brought her in with open arms, and it was awkward at first, but she became their daughter. He flies back after the tour of duty is over. The war is now winding down. They come back. They have a real wedding in America, right? They had it was a beautiful story, right? Of this, escape from Germany, and they have a 30-year marriage. He passes away.
Aww.
I see pictures on the walls of this guy or whatever it is. And so she had gotten remarried. And I said, oh, that's great. And she says, yeah. I said, so tell me about your second husband. Who's this guy? And she was like, oh, and he had passed away too. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful marriage. The second husband was actually the first guy that she asked to dance.
No.
Yeah. Yep. And it turns out that they had sort of like peripherally like kept in contact, and both soldiers were friends. They stayed friends even when, they came back to the States. And I asked her this question, and this actually shaped my life, like helped shape my life. This sales call was probably, it was an HVAC sales call. This was probably around, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe more, maybe 9 or 10 years ago. Anyway. And I said, well, what would your first husband say if he found out, if he knew that you had married, his friend, And she said, he would have wanted it no other way.
Because he'd know that she'd be taken care of.
Exactly. And here's this. And I spent hours in this house just talking to this woman about these stories. But yeah, so sort of shaped me. But
it really is like insane how it happens too, because you're not like looking for a story like this. Like, they just like you wake up in the morning, you get your coffee, you smoke 20 butts on the way to work, and then you walk into this house and bam, like in your face, here's this like super earth-shattering moment for you. That's what I love about this trade. And I love it because it's the systems too. Like you never ever know what you're walking into, not until you're in there. And even when you're in there, you don't know.
Have you had a scary moment? Have you had like a legit scary moment?
Yeah, I have. I have.
Tell
I've
us.
had moments where people, so I had one man who, so I was, like I said, I was printed in my local paper when I won the Malco thing. I still to this day have no idea who called my local paper or why they even knew, but they did. And they wrote a little write up. So that day, my phone would not stop ringing all day long. It was just constant. We want to hire you. We want to hire you. We want to hire you. So I started taking some of those calls that day. I was like, okay, I can at least smack these out today. So I'll do that. And one of them was a man with very ill will, apparently, because so I showed up and I was assessing a system. So he wanted to hire us for a maintenance contract. So I was just like documenting all the systems he had at his house. It was a pretty big house. He had actually a couple of RTUs, so that's how big the house was. And I like documented everything, took models and serials, got everything together for a quote to let him know how much it was going to be. And when I went looking for him, I got this super creepy feeling. And I was like, you know what? I don't like this. So I called Val at that moment. And when, so it took a while for Val to get there. So I continued looking for him. I was like, I'm just being a pussy, whatever. So I found the guy and I told him this is going to be your price. And he said, we can do better than that. And I'm like, we can, I'm setting the price, not you, buddy. And he's like, yeah. He was like, because what you're going to do is some very, very bad things, he said, which I will not say on this podcast. And I said, that's not going to happen, sir.
He made advances towards you that were inappropriate.
And not necessarily advances, but demands.
Crude
which is what
demands.
Takes it from gross to scary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I luckily have been hurt by men much bigger than him. So I said, that's not how it's going to go, buddy. And he didn't know Val was on his way either. So what I did was I said, listen, I'm going to give you a minute and I'm going to walk out that door. And when I come back in, you're going to be a normal human fucking being. And if you're not, it's going to go bad. So I walked out the door. He didn't know I was waiting for Val. So when I walked back in, it was both of us. And I walked in, I took his maintenance contract that I had just made up. I tore it to pieces. I threw it in his face. I walked out the door and grabbed Val by the arm and had to pull him out the door, but we made it out. And
did he want to go in? He wanted to go in there and just rip his head off.
Oh yeah. I shouldn't have let him go in there. That was actually, I've thought many times since then that was the poorest judgment I had that day, was letting Val go in that house, because it was, and I didn't have a lot of time to explain what was happening either. So it was just me blurting out, this is what just happened, get here. You know what I mean? So imagine that if that's your wife. Like it was a tumultuous moment for him. And I wanted to go in there and I wanted to speak my mind and I had backup now and I wanted, but instead I looked at Val and I knew what was going to happen. And I just tore up the maintenance agreement. I threw it in his face. I called him a pig. I turned around and grabbed Val. Val was trying to stay without me. So I grabbed Val and pushed him out the door and out we went and we never went back. But yeah, it was rough for me for a few weeks after that, trying to be allowed to go into customers' houses by myself.
Oh, wow. It was that traumatizing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. For both of us. I mean, for both of us, because imagine like if he couldn't have protected me, if I couldn't have called him, there were so many like variables that could have happened where he never would have forgiven himself either.
Why do I feel like you would have just throat punched him and that would have been it? Like done.
I would have fought back. And this is the thing, and this is what Val said. Val was like, any other girl, this would have been real bad. Like the reason he didn't act on it and only spoke on it is probably because he sensed that, It's not one of those situations where I don't get away, because I do get away and I ruin your fucking life. You know what I mean? But other girls, definitely girls who have been through some of the shit I've been through absolutely would have been done for that day.
So we're gonna wind down in a few minutes here. Let me ask you this. So we have a little levity of the situation here. So do you have like the most ridiculous, something like that was so hilarious that happened in a house that, you're like, okay, I told this story at parties.
So I have lots of them, but I've been wanting to tell this one since I got here. So we're going to tell this one.
Okay.
Because
what's this story? What's this story called? Ooh.
The story is called The Boom Boom Boiler. Okay.
Hold on.
So
I'm gonna put a little the boom boom boiler. Okay.
okay, so normally I wouldn't out Val like this, but this show's too fun not to. So one time we were
Okay.
working in a supermarket, and these people have a boiler for I think it was water side only. I don't think it was heating. So we were servicing it, right? And it was one of my first, and Val's teaching me how to service a wall hung boiler, right? So we pull it apart, we clean the heat exchanger, whole 9 yards. This happens to be one of the ones that has the baffle tube that goes down inside the heat exchanger. So for those of you who don't know, the heat exchanger is basically a big metal bowl, and then the baffle goes down inside it, and that controls the combustion pretty much. So if something happens to that baffle, it gets pretty scary. So anyway, I walk out of the room for a little bit and I'm putting tools away, and I'm like, okay, Val showed me really, really well how to service this boiler. I really feel comfortable with it and I could do it by myself. So then Val goes, okay, so stand back, because that's the procedure. When you turn on a boiler, it doesn't matter what you did to it, you stand back a few feet. And I stood back, and Val flipped the boiler switch, and a blue flame this fucking long shot out past Val's face. And this boiler was going boom, 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 boom. And I mean, it was freight train loud. It was shake the whole grocery store loud. And the weirdest part is nobody seemed to fucking notice, which I don't understand. Like, and I'm talking a blue flame, just like a fireball, just flew right out between us. And I hear him go, duck. And we both ducked, and it went over our heads. And it was the boiler still bapping off the wall, like literally bucking and smoking and spitting and all this shit. And I'm like, shut it off. So Val like reaches his arm up, like he's got some reach on him. He reaches his arm up and he just goes like that and shuts the kill switch. So it shut off, and we're both like traumatized. And I mean, we can't hear. That's how loud this was. This was explosion loud. And we're both like hearts pounding, shaking, looking at each other. Like, he's like, are you okay? Are you okay?
And what kind of building was this in?
This is like so it was in the concrete basement of a really large grocery store, of like a commercial grocery store, not like a small town thing.
Yeah.
And the basement has the bakery and the deli in it. So like where they're cutting the meat and where they're making the cakes is all down in there. So there's people everywhere when this happens. And it smelled so bad is the other thing. It smelled super, super bad. So I'm like, that was not doing that when we got here. What happened? How did this happen? So Val's like, the only way to find out is to retrace our steps. We had to have done something. This never done this before. And we cleaned it. So it should be running better. And shouldn't be like trying to jump off the wall. And it actually was bucking so hard off of the wall that the metal bracket it hangs with was completely bent. We had to bend it back to like get back inside the unit.
And you don't think that anybody in the actual grocery store heard anything? Like, you just
They
looked
didn't
around.
act
So
like it. I'm literally out the door and I'm like, and they're all just bustling by, like doing their own thing. And I'm like, no, they just don't want to say anything. They just don't want to know or something. It was literally like Twilight Zone. That's how loud this was and how bad this was. It was so bad that there was char marks on the wall and the fucking bracket was bent. Like, that's how loud it was.
You just reminded me. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You were talking. Go ahead.
Okay. So we retrace our steps. We pull off the, the jacket panel. We pull off all the screws to the heat exchanger. We pull it out, and I'm looking up at this time to see if maybe the high vent got closed. So the high vent is basically the place where air vents out. So I thought maybe like the relief blew and it just did something fucked up. And I look up, and the baffle that goes inside the heat exchanger is sitting on top of the boiler.
Okay, so break it down. So there's a major part that belongs inside the boiler that's not inside the boiler, right?
And it never got put back.
And that was human error. Let's just we're gonna call it human error. Okay.
That was Val error. So basically, we had just been working on this other Wiesmann that had like a loose fitting. Just the insulation on this baffle was loose, and it was causing that kind of like bap, 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 like misfiring weirdness, bucking it off the wall. And this was like 2 days earlier, we were working on this place. So I said to him when this all happened, I said, it's got to be something with that baffle. And he's like, no way we get 2 loose baffle casings in the same, 2 days. And sure enough, the baffle wasn't even in the goddamn machine. So yeah, needless to say, we put the baffle back, we closed it all up, and then Val and I drove home white as ghosts, almost in tears, like didn't say a word. And I mean, for weeks we were traumatized by this. Like, every time we had to turn a boiler on or off, we were like ducking and hiding.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
That's so
boom,
funny.
Boom boiler.
And
Yep.
the flame coming out, like I envisioned, like, you know, like a Hadouken, you know, from like Street Fighter 2
That's
kind of thing.
exactly what it was like. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it was like. It was blue in the middle and it just had this tail like a comet. It was terrible.
that is okay. I mean, I've experienced, you know, flame rollout and stuff like that, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
So, all right. You got one more. I need one more tale. I need one more adventure.
Okay.
What about
How about
what? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so do you guys know who Trent Parker is? Mr. Fat Cheeto.
I don't, maybe.
So he's the funny man of HVAC. So he has the Mr. Fat Cheeto page. He works with Jason Walker a lot. He's hilarious. He has like he's the like super tech guy that, you know, makes all the funny videos about being a hack, basically. So one day he messages me up, and this is not an in your house story, but this is an in your family story. So it still counts. So he messages me up and he says, "Hey, I just started a new podcast and it's prank calls." And I'm like, I've heard his impressions before. So I'm like, this is too fucking good. This is amazing. So he says, "Who do you got?" Because he knew he couldn't get me because I've heard them all. So I said, "You got to get Val." And he's like, "No, I'm not doing that to him. Val's too sweet. I'm not doing that to him." And I said, "You're doing it, Cheeto. You're doing it." So he's like, "All right, let's do it. Let's just do it." So he asked me for the name of a grocery store and a scenario that would get Val's blood like really boiling. So I tell him, okay, so tell him Tony's grocery store, which is not our client, but it's the one in our town. So it wouldn't surprise him at all, you know? So I said, Tony's grocery store, and tell him that there's a leak and all of all the racks are spitting refrigerant everywhere, and that your girlfriend came in to get groceries and told her that you could, you know, told me that I could fix this just by hitting it with a wrench. So I did that, and now there's refrigerant just flying all over the place, and you're going to pay for it. So Cheeto does this. He calls him, and Val is on a very, very testy job at that moment and was already pissed off. And Cheeto's with his little voice, he's like, "Your wife came in here to get groceries and she told me that I don't need to call you and hire you. I can do it myself if I just hit it with a wrench here at the king valve." And Val's like, "No, she didn't." He's like, "I don't give a what my wife said. You don't do what she says. You call me and I come and fix it. You know, I'm finding my heart to believe my wife would say that and all this shit." He's like, "She did, and you're going to pay for it." And Cheeto is fighting him. And I mean, fighting him hard with a Russian accent of all things. So we got the Russian accent and the Italian dude going at it like it's the olden days. It was bad to a point where Val hung up on him mid podcast. He hung up. He calls me up. And now I'm live. And he's like, "What the fuck did you say to the guy at Tony's? We are not fixing that. You never should have told him to touch shit." And I'm like, "I'm sorry. I thought he could do it himself. What do you mean?" He's like, "What the fuck is wrong? Did you lose your fucking mind?" Like all this shit. So I was like, "Oh my God, are you getting a beep? Because he's calling you back." And he's like, "Yep, I'm just going to go deal with it." And he answers the phone, and Cheeto's on the other hand. He goes, "Hey, Valentino." He's like, "This is Fat Cheeto. Your wife had me prank you. I'm the one that just called you." And
That's
Val
good.
literally like lost his shit on me.
That's good.
It was comedy gold. And you can hear that on the Sweat, Purge, and Roll podcast on YouTube. Look it up. It is
Sweat,
hilarious.
Purge, and Roll.
Yep. Sweat, Purge, and Roll.
So, all right. This has been a lot of fun. Before we close out here, all right, plug all the things you have all of the things. All right, so let's go.
All right, I'm ready. Rapid fire. So HVA-Chicks.com. If you want to sign up for training or resources, go to HVA-Chicks.com, click menu, click sign up. Our tech support number is on there. However, it is wrong. Do not use the tech support number that is on HVA-Chicks.com because Mr. Michael Hausch put it in wrong. It's actually 856 number. I will put it in the show notes and I'll send it to Everett. And HVA-Chicks Jennifer on every platform: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. If you want to send me an email, Jennifer@skillcatapp.com. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, and we have a new shoe line. Alive Shoes X HVA-Chicks comes out in 2 weeks. So there's that.
Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And thanks for
podcast I've ever been on by far.
Ooh, thank you.
This was fun.
That's great. So super cool. Really happy to have had you. You're doing amazing things. Congratulations on your award that you just won. And we'll swing back. We'll swing back around for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You got to come on mine too.
I will do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you
All right.
so
Thank
much.
you so much. Bye.
All right, guys. That was Jennifer. That was a lot of fun. You can check her out on HVA-Chicks.com. There's no dash actually. And yeah, so coming up, so I was supposed to interview Brent Buckley today. That's why HVAC, that's why Jennifer came on. Brent is a gazillion-dollar sales rep. He's been in houses forever and ever. His like legacy, he's had a couple of different, he's like third generation or second generation HVAC. And he's an incredible individual. I'm hopeful I have him on in the next couple of weeks. I have Brandon Stowe coming on. Many of you know who Brandon is. Very big figure in our industry. And I have a really good friend of mine. Her name is Shelly. She's coming on. She does hoarder houses. She does hoarder houses, cleanup, organization. It's bonk. Her stories are bonkers. So really excited. So awesome. Thanks. And we will see you next week. Oh, and I have Esty coming on from Certain Path. And she's actually coming on next week, Esty. So very cool. And awesome. Thank you guys. And by the way, we're getting so much, I'm getting just so much support. I mean, I'm watching these listens and these streams just go through the roof. I'm humbled. It's been really, really neat. So thank you guys so much. And we'll check you next week.